Greetings, Missouri Mid-South Conference. I bring you greetings this week from the Amistad Chapel here in the National Church setting in Cleveland, Ohio, where, as I mentioned last week, I have been Tuesday and Wednesday for a strategic visioning task force meeting of the National United Church of Christ. I come here because this is one of my favorite places. It is the very core of who I understand the goodness of the United Church of Christ to be. It is a place where I feel like the spirits of our ancestors who were courageous and prophetic and lived out their faith in real and unbelievable ways swirl around this place, as well as my hope, those of the spirits of those who will come long after us, who also live out their faith in courageous and prophetic ways here or in this place. But I also love this sanctuary because this Amistad Chapel reminds us of the very foundation, the core of who we are called to be. That we are called to live out our faith and live out our understanding of God. That in the moments where there is discrimination and oppression and immense injustice, that God's love is what calls us towards ensuring that all are created equal and all have worth and all have equality. Because this very place, the Amistad Chapel, in its architecture, in its meaning and history, reminds us of the time when our UCC ancestors supported financially, legally, spiritually, and emotionally those West African slaves who were forced onto the ship, the schooner Amistad, where the 26-year-old West African Joseph Cinque led a mutiny against those who were taking them to the United States to be sold into slavery. When they arrived in the United States, because there was a mutiny and because Joseph Cinque was trying to direct the ship back to West Africa, they were placed in jail, and it was our UCC ancestors who supported them financially and through the legal services in order to have their case brought before the United States courts. I say all of that because that's the legal and important, very important aspect. But I say it because in our nation's history, at the very volatile moment where the issues and the question and the demands of whether slavery was okay, not okay, suitable, not suitable, whether slavery was what happened of the day, and how do we move out of something so concrete, something that is destructive and oppressive and wrong? How do we move out of that kind of system into something, a system in a country where there is equality for all? My hope is that we can hear in this space and in the history of Amistad that a people struggled and sacrificed in order to stand with those who have been forced into slavery from Africa and from other places. I also shared to say that our work is not over. Unfortunately, slavery happens today in many different expressions, from sex trafficking, sex slavery, to the different forms of education injustice, socioeconomic injustice, the ways in which incarceration are another form and expression of slavery. I also share this in this space today because as I have been your conference minister for the past year, one of the things that I've learned, number one, is that Missouri embodies from the 19th century before and after the very complexity that was a part of our nation's history in terms of slavery, because there were pockets of Missouri that were for the Confederacy, there were pockets of Missouri that were for the Union, there were pockets of Missouri that held slavery, and there were pockets of Missouri, including our ancestors of the German Evangelical pastors and churches who were abolitionists and said, no, this is not okay. In some of my reading recently, I read about a German immigrant newspaper that was founded in our own Hermann, Missouri. There was an abolitionist newspaper that spread and communicated all throughout Missouri why slavery was wrong, from a political, from an economic, from a religious perspective. And it was the German pastors and German immigrants who were a part of that movement, in the abolitionist movement. I also lift up those African Americans who were ministers and speaking and offering this truth and this justice of equality from the very core of their being. I lift up the St. Louis minister, Reverend Moses Dickson, who spoke and who defended and who offered a prophetic and real, tangible expression of saying equality is not just for a few. Equality is not just for the people who can pay for it. Equality is for all. And it is Reverend Dickson who helped to create the Missouri Equal Rights League. This is our very moment, my brothers and sisters, to remind us that our heritage, the Amistad Chapel, the abolitionists of our German Evangelical brothers and sisters in Missouri, our African American brothers and sisters in Missouri also who fought for their own freedom. This is our heritage. Not to live on and not to pat ourselves on the back and say, shoo, that is done. Now we can live in equality and freedom, because you know as well as I do that inequality and injustice and oppression of many forms continues to pervade our society. My brothers and sisters, what we know is that today, from poverty, from education, from incarceration, from those who are being banned from traveling in and out of our country because of their own faith tradition being Muslim, we continue to experience expressions of oppression. We continue to live out those expressions of discrimination, racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, and we continue to separate. Under the stars of this very sanctuary, I remind us that God is not through with us yet. And God does not say, just wait, just be quiet, don't get political. God says, speak your faith through ensuring that all whom I have created in my image, that all have worth and equality, especially in the United States. This is our work. This is our worship. And from that place, my brothers and sisters, my hope and my prayer is that we will live into that in active, vocal, and many, many expressions. May the God who guides us and inspires us and holds us be with us in this time of equality and movement as well. this day and forevermore.